The sky over Santa Monica dawned clear that Saturday in May. Emily Parker observed the first rays of sunlight filtering through the white gossamer curtains while caressing her 6-month pregnant belly. She felt Lily move, as if she too perceived the importance of that day. The baby shower had been prepared with great care for weeks by her mother, Mrs. Helen, and by Olivia, her best friend since childhood. "Good morning, my little Lily," whispered Emily with a smile, feeling a little kick in response. "Today is our special day." She slowly sat up and looked at the clock. 7:15 in the morning. Michael, her husband, wasn't beside her. He had probably gone out for a run as he did every Saturday. 4 years of marriage had established predictable routines between them, daily rhythms that Emily found comforting. She liked the stability that Michael brought to her life, so different from the chaotic childhood she had experienced with an absent father and a mother who worked 3 jobs to support them. As she got up, Emily felt a slight dizziness. It was normal, Dr. Reynolds had told her at her last appointment. Amanda Reynolds was one of the most respected obstetricians in the region, and although she was somewhat distant and cold in her manner, her professionalism was reassuring. Michael had insisted that she be the one to handle the pregnancy, despite the higher cost it entailed. "Nothing is too good for my princess and for you," he had said, kissing her on the forehead. Emily showered slowly, enjoying the warm water on her skin. When she came out wrapped in a cream-colored towel, she noticed that Michael's phone was still on the nightstand. Strange, she thought. He never goes running without his phone. She picked it up out of curiosity and saw several notifications on the locked screen. Messages from Amanda Reynolds. A pang of unease shot through her chest, but she ignored it. Amanda was her doctor. It was normal for them to be in contact, perhaps due to some question about the latest tests. Emily put the phone back where it was and went to the closet to choose the dress she would wear that afternoon. A loose lavender dress, matching the decoration her mother had chosen for the party. The morning passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Mrs. Helen arrived early, loaded with boxes of pastries and additional decorations. Olivia appeared shortly, after with her husband Paul, who immediately offered to hang garlands and move furniture. The small living room of the house that Emily and Michael had bought 3 years ago, in a quiet neighborhood of Santa Monica, was gradually transformed into an ethereal and luminous space, with touches of lavender and white everywhere. "Where's Michael?" asked Mrs. Helen as she organized the small moon-shaped souvenirs they would give to the guests. "He went out for a run," Emily replied automatically, although she was beginning to worry. It was almost 11, and there was still no sign of him. "Typical," muttered Olivia with a certain tone of reproach. "The most important day for you and he disappears." "Don't say that," Emily defended him. "I'm sure he's buying some surprise." But as she said it, a knot formed in her throat. Something wasn't right. She could feel it. Perhaps it was the furtive glances that Michael and Amanda had exchanged at the last ultrasound, or those calls at strange hours that he always answered while walking away. Or maybe it was simply that instinct that all women develop when something starts to break, even though the fragments aren't yet visible. At 12:30, with the first guests about to arrive, Emily decided to call him. His phone was still on the nightstand, so she dialed his office number. Michael was an architect, a partner in a small studio that was gaining recognition in the region. No one answered. It was Saturday after all. The party began without him. The guests arrived punctually, bringing gifts wrapped in delicate papers and silk ribbons. Strollers, baby clothes, educational toys, everything a baby might need in her first months. Emily smiled mechanically, answering questions about the chosen name, about the already prepared room, about plans after the birth, but her gaze constantly drifted toward the door, expecting to see Michael appear with some reasonable excuse and an embarrassed smile. At 4 in the afternoon, when the diaper cake, artistically decorated, was placed in the center of the table for the group photo, Emily's phone vibrated in her dress pocket. At last. With trembling hands, she unlocked the screen. It wasn't a call, it was a text message. "I can't pretend anymore, I'm with Amanda. Don't look for me, I'm sorry." Michael. Time seemed to stop. The world around Emily became blurry. Sounds reached. her muffled as if she were submerged underwater. Dr. Amanda Reynolds, the obstetrician who was monitoring her pregnancy. The doctor who 3 days earlier had smiled delicately while passing the warm gel over her belly, with Michael, her husband, holding her hand. The woman they had entrusted with Lily's health. The pain was so sudden and intense that Emily staggered, one hand instinctively resting on her 6-month pregnant belly. The conversations around ceased. The laughter diminished to uncomfortable whispers. "Emily?" Her mother's voice, Mrs. Helen, crossed the crowd with concern. "Honey, what happened?" How could she explain that the man with whom she had shared 4 years of marriage had just abandoned her via text message during their daughter's own baby shower? Emily looked up, fighting against the knot in her throat. "He left. Michael left me." The phrase came out in a broken whisper, barely audible, but with the effect of a bomb in that room decorated with balloons and flowers. Olivia, her best friend, took the cell phone from Emily's hand and read the message. Her expression of disbelief gave way to rage in a matter of seconds. "During the baby shower by message, he's a worm." The guests began to disperse, uncomfortably aware of witnessing a moment too intimate and painful. Paul, Olivia's husband, tried to control the situation, thanking everyone for their presence and explaining that Emily wasn't feeling well. Mrs. Helen, pale as a ghost, remained with her daughter, holding her hand tightly. Emily remained motionless, the world spinning around her. She felt nauseous, a dull pain in her lower abdomen, and a tightness in her chest that made it difficult to breathe. "I need to go home," she murmured. She needed proof. She wanted to hear it from his mouth. She couldn't believe that 4 years together, 1,200 days sharing the bed, the dreams, the plans for the future, could end in a 12-word message. Olivia offered to accompany her, but Emily insisted on going alone. "I need space," she said, although what she really needed was to collapse without witnesses. The journey from her mother's house to the home she had built with Michael was like a feverish dream. The streets of Santa Monica, normally welcoming and familiar, seemed distorted, hostile. The taxi left her in front of the white door with climbing flowers that they had planted together the first year. Emily paid mechanically, not waiting for change. When she opened the door, the silence hit her like a slap. The house had never been so silent. Not even when Michael traveled for work, it was a definitive silence, empty, a silence of absence. "Michael?" she called, knowing she wouldn't get an answer. She went through each room with uncertain steps. In the bedroom, the closet was open, half the hangers empty. In the bathroom, his razor, his favorite cologne, his toothbrush were missing. In the study, some books had disappeared. It hadn't been a spur-of-the-moment impulse. Michael had planned this, had meticulously prepared his departure, while she organized a party to celebrate their daughter's arrival. On the study table, a white envelope with her name. Emily opened it with trembling hands, hoping to find explanations, apologies, some indication that the man she loved still existed somewhere. "I've seen the tests. Something is wrong with Lily's heart. Amanda will explain it to you. She's excellent. Trust her professionally." There was no signature, there was no "I'm sorry," nor an "I loved you once." Just cold information, as if he were talking to a distant acquaintance and not the woman carrying his daughter in her womb. Emily felt her legs failing her. She collapsed into the study chair, the letter still in her hands. Something wrong with Lily's heart? What tests? Amanda had never mentioned any problem to her in any of the consultations. Why would she have told Michael first? And why had he, instead of facing the situation together, decided to escape? It was then that the contractions began. First a dull pain, then a sharp stab that made her double over. Instinctively, Emily knew something was very wrong. Lily shouldn't be born yet. There were 3 months left. With her phone in hand, she dialed the emergency number. Then she called Olivia. Contractions every 5 minutes, going to the hospital. The last thing she thought before the ambulance arrived was that Lily's room, painted in pale yellow with silver stars on the ceiling, was ready to receive her. But her family, the one Emily had imagined complete and happy, had broken even before it formed. "Lily, stay still just a little longer, my love." Emily tried to calm her 16-month-old daughter. who was protesting while the nurse finished the examination. Little Lily had dark, curly hair like her mother, but Michael's light eyes that Emily avoided looking at for too long so as not to feel the sharp pain of memory. Schoen syndrome was a rare congenital heart condition. When it was diagnosed, shortly after Lily's premature birth, Emily had to learn medical terms she never would have imagined would be part of her vocabulary. Mitral stenosis, aortic coarctation, subaortic stenosis, words she now repeated as if she had always known them. Lily had already undergone 2 surgeries, the first barely 3 days after birth, when her lips turned bluish and her breathing became shallow. The second at 8 months, a more complex intervention that required 2 weeks of hospitalization. Emily remembered those days as an endless nightmare. The constant beeping of the monitors, the smell of disinfectant, the cold hospital corridors, and above all, the loneliness. The absolute and devastating loneliness of facing something like this without support. Michael never appeared. Not a call, not a message. He disappeared from both their lives as if he had never existed. Dr. Reynolds also vanished, replaced by a team of pediatric cardiologists who, fortunately, were excellent professionals. Emily suspected that the couple had fled to another city, perhaps to another country, far from the scandal their relationship would have caused in the small community of Santa Monica. Now, 16 months later, a 3rd surgery was becoming inevitable. Lily was growing, and with her the problems in her heart evolved, requiring new interventions. Dr. Martinez, the pediatric cardiologist who was following Lily's case, had been direct. "It will be an expensive surgery, Emily. Approximately $200,000. The insurance covers 60%, $80,000. An impossible amount for a single mother who worked as a freelance graphic designer and lived with difficulty in a small rented apartment on the outskirts of the city. After Michael left, Emily had to sell the house they shared to pay the first medical bills. What was left of the money, along with her savings, quickly evaporated between treatments, medications, and specialized consultations. Mrs. Helen helped, as much as she could, but her widow's pension barely gave her enough to live on. Olivia and Paul had been a constant support, taking care of Lily when Emily had to finish some urgent project, bringing them food when they knew the refrigerator was empty, offering a shoulder to cry on in the darkest moments. But even with their help, Emily barely managed to keep the bills paid. "We're done, Mrs. Parker," said the nurse with a kind smile. "Dr. Martinez will come in a moment to discuss the results." Emily nodded, feeling the familiar weight of anxiety settling in her chest. She took Lily in her arms, gently rocking her while humming a lullaby that her own mother used to sing to her as a child. The little girl calmed down immediately, resting her head on Emily's shoulder. Despite all she had suffered in her short life, Lily was a happy and affectionate child, with a smile that lit up any room. Dr. Martinez came in shortly after, with a folder full of papers and a serious expression that Emily had learned to fear. "The latest echocardiograms show a worsening of the mitral stenosis," she began, sitting across from them. "Additionally, the coarctation we corrected in the 2nd surgery is showing signs of re-narrowing." Emily nodded, holding Lily a little, tighter against her chest. "How urgent is the intervention?" "We should schedule it for within 2 months at the most," replied the doctor. "The procedure will be more complex than the previous ones. We'll need a specialist in pediatric heart valves." "And the cost?" asked Emily, although she already knew the answer. "As I mentioned, around $200,000. The insurance will cover part, but you'll need to get the rest before we can schedule the surgery." Emily felt the world collapsing again. $80,000. Where was she going to get that money? She had exhausted all options. Bank loans, rejected due to her precarious financial situation. Property sales, she had nothing of value left. Applications to foundations, long waiting lists. "I understand," she finally said with a calmness she didn't feel. "I'll find a way." Dr. Martinez looked at her with compassion. She had been treating Lily long enough to know Emily's situation. "We'll explore all available options," she added, trying to sound hopeful. "There are some assistance programs for cases like this. I'll send you the information." But they both knew that these programs were saturated, that the waiting lists were endless, and that Lily's time was running against them. Upon leaving the hospital, Emily paused for a moment in the gardens. It was an autumn afternoon, with the sun filtering through the golden leaves. Lily had fallen asleep in her arms, exhausted after the examination. Carefully, she placed her in her stroller and sat on a bench, observing her serene face. "We're going to make it, my little one," she whispered, although she had no idea how. "Mommy will find a way." The journey to the small apartment was silent. Lily was still asleep, and Emily's thoughts were too chaotic to verbalize. Upon arrival, she found Mrs. Helen waiting for them, with a pot of homemade soup steaming in the kitchen. "How did it go?" asked the elderly woman, taking Lily from Emily's arms to put her in her crib. Emily waited for her mother to return to the kitchen before collapsing into a chair, the tears she had been holding back for hours finally being released. "She needs another operation, Mom," she said between sobs. "And we don't have the money." Mrs. Helen sat beside her, taking her hands in hers, wrinkled by years and hard work. "We'll find a solution, my child," she said with that certainty that only mothers can have. "There's always a way." But that night, when Mrs. Helen left and Lily was sleeping soundly in her crib, Emily sat on the bathroom floor, her back against the bathtub, and cried silently. She cried for Lily, for her damaged heart. She cried for herself, for the life she had imagined and that had vanished. She even cried for Michael, for the man she had believed she knew and who never really existed. At midnight, her phone rang, with an unknown number. For a terrible moment, Emily thought it might be Michael. After so long, why would he call now? Had he heard about Lily's condition? Would he finally come to help them? With trembling hands, she answered. "Mrs. Parker?" The voice on the other end was formal, professional, with a slight accent she couldn't identify. "I'm calling from the Westwood Institute of Advanced Cardiology in Boston. Dr. Nathan Reynolds has seen your daughter's case and would be interested in offering her free treatment through our humanitarian program." Emily was left breathless. Had she heard correctly? Reynolds? Like Amanda Reynolds? It couldn't be a coincidence. "Why?" she asked, the distrust evident in her voice. "Dr. Reynolds is one of the world's leading specialists in complex pediatric congenital heart diseases," explained the voice. "Your case caught his attention through our screening program." Emily wasn't convinced. How would Lily's case have reached Boston? And why would a renowned specialist be specifically interested in a child from California? Additionally, continued the voice as if anticipating her doubts, "the doctor wishes to offer you a job, personal assistant with accommodation included in the Institute's facilities for both you and the child." That was even stranger. A job, accommodation. Too convenient, too perfect to be real. "I need to think about it," replied Emily, suspicion mixing with desperation. "Of course. Dr. Reynolds will be in Santa Monica next week for a conference. You could meet him personally if you wish." Emily agreed to the meeting, albeit with reservations. She couldn't afford to reject any possibility, however improbable it might seem. Lily needed that operation, and if this mysterious Dr. Reynolds could provide it. After hanging up, Emily remained sitting on the bathroom floor for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. Was it possible that this doctor was related to Amanda? Was he somehow connected to Michael? Was it a form of compensation, or something more sinister? There was only one way to find out. She would have to meet Dr. Nathan Reynolds and judge for herself. That night, Emily slept restlessly, with confused dreams in which Michael and a faceless man mixed, while Lily floated away, her little heart shining like a red star in the darkness. The Westwood Institute of Advanced Cardiology had set up a temporary headquarters at Santa Monica Central Hospital for the international conference. Emily arrived with Lily punctually at the agreed time, dressed in the best clothes she could find, a simple aquamarine dress that Olivia had lent her for the occasion, and flat shoes that she had meticulously cleaned the night before. The contrast between her daily life and the luxury of the area reserved for the Institute was overwhelming. Polished marble floors, elegantly dressed receptionists, doctors in expensive suits and expressions of importance. Emily felt completely out of place, holding Lily in her arms as if she were a shield against all that intimidating opulence. "Mrs. Parker," greeted a young receptionist with a professional smile. "Dr. Reynolds is waiting for you. Follow me, please." Emily took a deep breath and followed the young woman through a hallway lit by large windows. Lily observed everything with curiosity, her light eyes wide open at the unfamiliar environment. The receptionist led them to a private waiting room, decorated with modern furniture and abstract artwork. On the other side of the door, she explained, Dr. Reynolds was finishing a meeting. Meanwhile, Dr. Sarah Williams, our pediatric cardiology specialist, will examine little Lily if that's okay with you, she added. Emily nodded, somewhat relieved to have a few more minutes before facing the mysterious doctor. Williams turned out to be a warm woman, about 50 years old, with a genuine smile and kind eyes. She spoke to Lily in a sweet tone that made the girl relax immediately, and explained each step of the examination to Emily with a clarity she deeply appreciated. "Lily is an extraordinary child," commented the doctor while listening to her chest. "Schwann syndrome is a very complex condition, and she has shown admirable resilience." "She's been fighting since day one," replied Emily with pride. "And you too, from what I see," added the doctor, looking at her directly. "It can't be easy to manage all this alone." Emily simply nodded, not trusting her voice to respond without breaking. While Lily played with some colored blocks that the doctor had provided, Emily took the opportunity to ask about the Westwood Institute and about Dr. Reynolds. "The Institute is one of the most advanced cardiovascular research and treatment centers in the United States," explained Dr. Williams. "Dr. Nathan Reynolds is our medical director and one of the pioneers in minimally invasive techniques for congenital heart defects." "And your humanitarian program?" asked Emily, trying to make her voice sound casual. "It's quite selective," admitted the doctor. "We accept cases that represent particular medical challenges or that can contribute to our research." She paused, as if considering her next words. "Although I must admit that Dr. Reynolds showed a personal interest in Lily's case as soon as it came to his hands." Before Emily could inquire further, the door opened and an assistant announced that Dr. Reynolds was ready to receive them. "I wish you the best," said Dr. Williams, gently squeezing Emily's shoulder. "And remember, we're here to help you." Emily took Lily in her arms and followed the assistant to the adjoining office. Her heart was beating hard, a mixture of hope and fear stirring in her chest. What would she find on the other side of that door? What kind of man was Nathan Reynolds, and why had he become interested in Lily? Upon entering, the first thing she noticed was the light. The office had floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the hospital gardens. The second was the silence, an almost absolute silence that contrasted with the usual bustle of a medical center. And then she saw him. Dr. Nathan Reynolds was standing by one of the windows, his back to the door, tall, with broad shoulders and dark hair. When he turned to look at them, Emily felt the world stop. He was identical to Michael, the same profile, the same bone structure, the same light eyes. But there was something different in his gaze, in his posture, in the way he kept his hands in the pockets of his white coat. Emily was paralyzed, unable to take another step. Lily, sensing her mother's tension, clung to her neck more tightly. "I'm not Michael," he said, with a deep and calm voice, as if he had rehearsed that phrase. "I'm Nathan, twin brother, ex-twin, his brother, twins." Michael had never mentioned having a twin brother, or any family, in fact. Whenever Emily asked, he would change the subject or give vague answers about a difficult childhood and broken family ties. "Why are we here?" Emily asked directly, regaining some composure. "Is this some kind of compensation? Did Michael ask you to help us?" Nathan Reynolds frowned, a gesture that made him look even more like Michael, and at the same time completely different. "I haven't spoken to Michael in 11 years, he replied coldly. "And I have no intention of doing so." "Then why?" insisted Emily, the distrust evident in her voice. "Why us? Why Lily?" Nathan indicated the armchairs in front of his desk. "Please sit down," he said in a professional tone that contrasted with the tension of the moment. "And allow me to explain." Emily hesitated, but finally moved forward and sat down, keeping Lily in her lap. The girl observed Nathan with quiet curiosity, without the fear that Emily would have expected at a stranger so similar to a father she never knew. "I am a specialist in rare congenital heart diseases," began Nathan, sitting across from them. Schoen syndrome is my specific area of research. When Lily's case came to our system through the International Network of Pediatric Heart Diseases, it immediately interested me because of its clinical characteristics. He paused as if measuring his next words. It was only afterwards, seeing the mother's name and the city, that I understood the coincidence. Emily looked at him fixedly, still not convinced. And you decided to help us because of what? Fraternal. Guilt. A shadow crossed Nathan's face, an old pain that Emily recognized because she carried it inside herself. Lily can be saved, he finally said, ignoring her question. I have experience in cases like hers. I've developed a valve reconstruction technique that could greatly benefit her. I want to do this. Why offer me a job? Asked Emily. Why accommodation? You could simply operate on Lily without all this complication. Nathan leaned forward, keeping his eyes fixed on hers. The rehabilitation will be long. She'll need specialized care for months. In Boston, we have the resources that Lily needs, not just for the surgery, but for her complete recovery. It was reasonable, but Emily still felt that there was something more, something that Nathan wasn't saying. I understand your doubts, Mrs. Parker, he continued, as if reading her thoughts. In your place, I would also be suspicious. That's why I want to make something clear. The employment is completely optional. The treatment for Lily is free, regardless of your answer. If you prefer to stay in Santa Monica and only travel to Boston for the surgery and checkups, we can arrange that. Emily studied his face, looking for signs of deception. But all she saw was professional determination and perhaps a trace of that same loneliness she knew so well. Lily stirred in her lap, stretching her small hands toward Nathan with a smile. Emily instinctively held her back. Lily needs the surgery. Soon, she said at last. And I can't pay what it costs. You won't have to. No conditions? No conditions. The decision seemed simple, seen from the outside. A free surgery performed by one of the best specialists in the world to save her daughter's life. Any mother would accept without hesitation, but nothing in this situation was simple. Nothing in it was light. I need time to think about it, said Emily, standing up with Lily in her arms. Nathan nodded, showing no surprise. Of course. We'll be in Santa Monica for 3 more days. Here's my card with my direct number. Call me when you've made a decision. Emily took the card, noting the Westwood Institute shield embossed on it. Dr. Nathan Reynolds, Medical Director, Specialist in Pediatric Congenital Heart Diseases. One last question, she said, already at the door. Does Michael know about this? Nathan kept his impassive expression, but Emily noticed how his hands tensed on the desk. As I told you, we don't speak. He knows nothing of my life, nor I of his, and I prefer it to stay that way. Emily nodded and left without saying more. As she walked down the long hallway back, with Lily playing with her necklace, she tried to process everything that had just happened. Michael's twin brother, a world specialist, an offer impossible to reject, but impossible to accept without questions. That night, sitting in the small kitchen of her apartment, with Lily already asleep, Emily called Olivia. I can't believe it, said her friend after hearing the whole story. Her twin brother, Michael never mentioned him. Never, confirmed Emily. He always avoided talking about his family. And what are you going to do? Emily looked out the window toward the city lights. I don't know, Olivia. On one hand, it's the opportunity Lily needs. On the other, I can't help wondering if there's something more behind all this. Do you think Michael could be involved? In some way? Nathan seems to hate him, but they're brothers, twins at that, who knows? Olivia sighed on the other end of the line. Em, you know I'll support you in whatever you decide. But be realistic. Do you have another option? Lily needs that surgery, and soon. Emily closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision on her shoulders. No, I don't have another option, she finally admitted. I'll go to Boston. The call to Nathan Reynolds was brief. He showed no surprise or enthusiasm at her decision, only confirmed the practical details with professional efficiency. In 2 weeks, a flight would take them to Boston. A new life waited, full of uncertainties, but also of hope for Lily. That Night as she packed the few belongings they would take, Emily paused before the only photograph of Michael she had kept. It wasn't an image of the two of them together, but one he had taken during a trip, smiling at a sunset on some distant beach. She had kept it for Lily, thinking that someday she would want to know what her father looked like. Now, looking at that face so identical to Nathan's and yet so different, Emily wondered if she had really known the man she married. Boston received Emily and Lily with a fine but persistent rain, typical of New England autumn. The Westwood Institute rose imposingly on a hill with views of the bay, an ultra-modern architectural building with glass facades that reflected the grey sky like enormous mirrors. An assistant named Megan was waiting for them at the airport and took them directly to the Institute, explaining during the journey the practical details of their new situation. The assigned apartment was in the residential wing, where doctors in training and staff on extended guard duty lived. It was small, but functional, with a room for Lily, another for Emily, a kitchen, dining room, and a bathroom. Meals could be taken in the Institute's cafeteria or prepared by themselves. Emily's job would mainly consist of managing Dr. Reynolds's agenda and correspondence, organizing conferences, and serving as a liaison with international patients. The doctor is very demanding, warned Megan with a smile that tried to soften her words. But he's fair, and a genius in his field. Emily nodded, absorbing all the information while trying to keep Lily calm. The girl was restless after the flight, her little eyes constantly moving between the buildings and the people passing by. They barely had time to settle into the apartment before the first communication from Nathan arrived. Lily would be thoroughly examined the next day, and then they would schedule the surgery. Emily should report to his office first thing in the morning to begin with her duties. That night, while Lily slept in her new bed, surrounded by the few toys they had brought from California, Emily sat by the window observing the lights of Boston. It was a beautiful city, with an air of ancient melancholy that resonated with her own state of mind. So far from home, so close to the man who was identical to the one who had abandoned her. Had she made the right decision? The answer came 3 weeks later, when Nathan Reynolds came out of the operating room after 7 hours of surgery, with a slight smile of satisfaction and tired eyes. "Everything went well," he said simply. "Lily is strong." Emily, who had spent those 7 hours in an agony of waiting, felt her legs giving way. A nurse helped her sit down, while the tears finally found release. "Can I see her?" was all she could ask. "As soon as they transfer her to recovery," replied Nathan, his professional voice softening a bit. "She'll be connected to several monitors and sedated, but you'll be able to touch her hand." Emily nodded, drying her tears with the back of her hand. "Thank you," she said, looking directly into his eyes. "I'll never be able to thank you enough." Nathan seemed uncomfortable with her gratitude. "It's my job," he replied, returning to his usual coldness. "And Lily is an exceptional patient." In the following days, while Lily recovered in the pediatric ICU, Emily alternated between being with her daughter and fulfilling her new job responsibilities. Nathan had been clear. She shouldn't neglect her work even in these circumstances. He was methodical, demanding, and detail-oriented to the extreme. Every email, every appointment, every document had to be perfect. He didn't tolerate errors or excuses. But Emily soon discovered that beneath that cold and distant facade, Nathan Reynolds hid a deep humanity. She noticed it in the way he treated his patients, especially children, with a gentleness that contrasted notably with his usual severity. She saw it in the extra hours he dedicated to complicated cases, in how he stayed late studying new techniques, in his almost obsessive determination to save every life that came to his hands. And above all, she perceived it in how he looked at Lily when he thought no one was watching. It was Dr. Hannah Craig, a colleague of Nathan's, who had been working with him for years, who finally gave her some clues about the enigmatic doctor. Nathan and Michael were like day and night, she told her one afternoon, as they had coffee in the cafeteria. Physically identical twins, but opposites in everything else. Emily hadn't mentioned Michael, but apparently her story was known among Nathan's closest colleagues. Michael was always the charismatic one, the sociable one, the one who got everything without effort, continued Hannah. Nathan was the studious one, the serious one, the introvert. When they entered medical school, everyone bet on Michael. He had that gift for being liked, for making people trust him. Emily perfectly recognized that description. It was exactly what had attracted her to Michael: his charisma, his apparent confidence, his ability to make everything seem easy and fun. "What happened between them?" she asked, increasingly intrigued. Hannah hesitated, as if she were evaluating how much she could reveal. "There was an incident in the 3rd year," she finally said. "Michael convinced Nathan to take an important exam in his place. Nathan accepted. I think he had always had that weakness for pleasing his brother. But they were discovered. Nathan took all the responsibility. He was temporarily expelled, lost an important scholarship. Michael, instead, denied everything and managed to come out practically unscathed." "Sounds like something he would do," murmured Emily, remembering how Michael always avoided taking responsibility. "Nathan had to fight twice as hard to regain his reputation," continued Hannah. "Meanwhile, Michael left medicine without finishing his degree and disappeared. I think he later studied architecture or something like that." "Architecture, yes," confirmed Emily. "He never mentioned having studied medicine before." "Typical," said Hannah with disdain. "In any case, Nathan and he haven't spoken to each other since then, as far as I know." That conversation shed some light on the mystery that was Nathan Reynolds. But Emily still felt that there was more, something personal that would explain his particular interest in Lily. Because although he tried to maintain a professional distance, it was evident that the girl's case affected him in a special way. She confirmed it one afternoon, almost 2 months after the operation, when she found Nathan on the Institute's terrace, observing the sunset. Lily had already been discharged. Although she was following a rigorous rehabilitation program, her recovery was being exceptional, according to all the specialists. "May I join you?" asked Emily, hesitating to interrupt his solitude. Nathan nodded slightly, without taking his gaze from the horizon where the sun was sinking into the bay, tinting the water orange and pink. They remained in silence for several minutes, a silence that, surprisingly, didn't feel uncomfortable.